On today's show, we have a treat for you. We had Frankie Rosario of the FBA, the Franchise Brokers Association. Frankie's a sales manager there for franchises, and he is on the show today to talk about how you can use a franchise to start a business and how to make sure that you know what to do to navigate those waters. Some of you out there may be looking at starting their own business, or maybe you want to buy a franchise. This is an episode you're going to want to listen to, you don't want to miss. Please like and subscribe. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. I'm James Groves, and along with my business partner, Bill DeMent, we want to share our journey as small business owners with you. As owners of Hole in the Wall drywall repair, we will attempt to peel back the curtain of owning a small business in the trade service industry and talk about the many adventures of owning a small business. Hey, Bill.
Morning, James.
How are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Good. It's been a couple of weeks. We took a couple of weeks off. We had lots going on.
It's been a busy season.
Yeah. So we typically drop every Tuesday, but because of all the excitement, we needed to push pause.
Well, let's talk about excitement because you found some more to bring in on the podcast today.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, that was probably the single longest pre-show we've ever had.
Oh my gosh.
Or close to it.
Yeah, he showed up over an hour ago.
And we didn't cover anything twice. It was all fresh territory.
Yeah.
That was really good.
What's exciting is because, obviously we're into franchising and we are learning a ton, and we are part of these different types of groups. And we are very lucky, very blessed to have one of the brokerage associations in Florida, in Orlando.
Yeah, right here in Orlando.
So when we became a member of the FBA, we were blessed enough to have, Frank here with us. I said, why don't you come by and check out our facility and stuff. So I would love to introduce Frankie Rosario. Frankie?
James, Bill, it's a pleasure to have me.
Pleasure.
Welcome.
Thanks
so
for coming in today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Frankie is a franchise sales manager here. He's based out of Orlando, obviously, but you represent, businesses all across the country, right?
Yes.
And so why don't you just kind of fill us in a little bit on who you are, and let's just start this conversation
Absolutely.
off.
My journey in franchising started about 4 years ago with FBA, and kind of started off as a support specialist, right? So building listings and really working with the franchisors to kind of put their listing out in front of these franchise consultants and brokers in tip-top shape, right? So that they have an opportunity to put their best foot forward and learning, best practices for those who are unfamiliar with the franchise space,
right?
And what a franchise broker is, was just really helping kind of coach them into what franchising, what this partnership is, because this industry is so far and vast and such a big hole, especially with somebody coming in brand new. It's a lot to take in.
Well, and I'm always surprised because we've been at it for a couple of years now, and I'm always surprised at how little people actually know about franchising from the outside,
right?
Because we're just immersed in it every day, and we're actively learning more every day too. But it is amazing. People go, okay, so how does that work exactly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I was amazed because I knew about franchises, obviously McDonald's and all the big boy brands, Dunkin' Donuts and Subway. But it's like, I didn't realize how vast the franchising is. I mean, there's literally a franchise for almost
everything.
Yeah. We started going to these franchise shows, and I'm walking around kind of going, you teach swimming lessons? And there's a franchise for swimming lessons?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, you sell electric car chargers. It was just blew out. Coffee. I mean, so many coffee franchises.
A lot of coffee stuff. Yeah.
So, and it kind of blew my mind. And it leads me back to well, if you want to start a business, but you don't know what business to start, boom.
Yeah. Franchise is the way to go. I mean,
yeah.
It is a business, not only in a box, but it comes with support, right? I mean, that's the most important thing, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, is a lot of people try to figure it out on their own, right? And it's something that it takes steps, right? I mean, there's things that you don't know until you either mess up and it costs you some money, but franchising is about stopping that, right? And that's why, you as a franchisor, right, you get to teach your franchisees, hey, you come into training, and hey, we've already taken those steps and we've made those mistakes. We don't want you to make the same ones, right? So you really lay out the land for them to go out and be successful.
Yeah, here's the process. Do it this way. And I've heard franchisors say, don't reinvent the wheel. Just stick to the knitting for year one.
Yeah.
And follow the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've heard stories of people who buy a franchise and they think they can do it better than the franchisor. It's like, no, you need to kind of wait for a minute. Let the work the process. The process works. I mean, we're here for a reason. The franchisors are here to be that support. The last thing I want to do is have somebody stuck in Boise, Idaho, and they don't have any support, and they're not making any money, and they're very unhappy, and then they drop off.
Right.
Now I've got something on my FDD that I don't care to have on there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I got a disgruntled owner. So my goal is to make sure that guy or gal has everything they need to be successful. Right.
Exactly. No, that's the way to go. And I love your guys' approach to it. The, bringing them in house and supporting them, and being along with the, with the development group that you guys are with, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Fran Growth. I mean, that's just an added layer of support for not only for them, but also for you guys.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is adding to your guys' repertoire, right? And doing this every single day and getting in front of the ideal candidates and really working side by side these owners who are coming into your system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I got curious if we hadn't found the group that helped us launch, could we as business owners come to FBA, which stands for
Franchise Brokers Association.
Right. Just want to make sure we said that out loud. Would you guys be able to point us in the right direction, any business in the right direction to actually become a franchisor?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's what my job is, right? Is essentially I'm helping on the development side, strategy, helping not only make those connections with the brokers, but also strategizing the right way, right? Hey, you may have a perfect business, a really successful business. You want to franchise it. Where do you go? Right. And time again, I tell these, a lot of experiences that I've had happen where business owners come, they want to franchise their business and they don't pull the trigger because they can't find a good company to franchise their business. And everybody's, pricing is different and they just don't kind of get that connection and the feel, that right feel. And then here comes somebody behind them with the same idea, franchises it. And then 200, units later, they're like, well, I wish I would have done it in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. So we're a hub of not only education, but also exposure. And we want to work with you. I want to support you. We've got we like to have a tight knit relationship. And so, for anybody who's really wanting to learn about franchising or how to become a franchisor or even a franchisee buying into one, FBA is definitely a hub where they can come to.
Yeah. And so explain just a little bit. I mean, I know, but for the audience, why is it important to be part of an organization like FBA? What is a broker versus because we were trying to do it ourselves for a couple of years, and there's a difference in energy. There's a difference in.
It was pretty hard sledding, wasn't it?
It was a couple of years. So what is the benefit of having, multiple brokers? I mean, how many people are in your organization selling franchises?
Yeah, we've got a little over 200 consultants in our network, and I always like to suggest, right, especially brand new franchisors, be in multiple broker network groups, right? Because the broker network groups keep exclusivity over their brokers. And so you don't want to just tie yourself down to one group of people. You want to have multiple groups of people that know about your brand because everybody focuses in different industries, right? So there you might have a bunch of consultants that are focused in fitness and, health and wellness. And then you might have others who are just like senior care and health and, in that field or food and service. Mm-hmm. And then some that are focused in on home services. And so being a part of different groups gives you larger pools to pull from, right? And be able to get the brand out.
Yeah. And frankly, instead of having, one or two guys like we did, we now have 200 plus with the organization, and the other organizations we're in, we probably have 1,000 to 1,200 consultants and so instead of us trying to market ourselves to the end user, the end consumer buyer, the franchisee,
right,
we market ourselves now to the consultants and the brokers, just so they can get out in front of all these other people who want to buy.
And what's key about that as well is they're essentially, right, the brokers and consultants are additional sales reps, right, essentially to your business, right? Even though they're not awarding, the actual franchise, they're able to help put that put your franchise in front of prospects that none of, if you weren't a part of that group, wouldn't have known about your franchise.
Absolutely indispensable.
Yeah. And frankly, it's something that I didn't know existed for a long time because we were just like, well, do we want to be a part of a group like this? We actually had someone from the IFPG, Liz Leonard, on the podcast a few months back, and we weren't in the IFPG back then. And she's like, you need to be in a group.
Absolutely.
Like, well, we just want to make sure,
But do you remember there were people who kept discouraging us? Like, you just need to get out there and sell a few units and then get in a group because a lot of them don't want to work with people who are just really green at franchising.
Yeah, they were really discouraging us from joining any kind of brokerage consulting group because it was like, oh, you're not big enough yet.
But when Dan from Fran Growth came in and had a look at us, he commented later, but his thought must have been, these guys are ready. They operate as though they have 100 franchises already.
Yeah.
So we found that really encouraging.
And it was a requirement. Frangro's like, you're with us, you will be in groups.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
period.
The relationships in this industry, relationships are everything. And I'll give you an example, right? I mean, there's a lot of green, if you will, right? Or brand new franchises that come in and have no idea what to do, where to start with lead flow, how to work a deal, how to,
I can believe that.
I mean, it's hard, right? Because a lot of people don't know about your brand. You can be based out of, a small town, and yeah, your town knows about you, your city, maybe your county, but a state over, right? Or two counties over have never heard of your business, right? And so when you're able to get that out to brokers in all these different communities and all these different states, now you're starting to grow, right? I always like to preach about responsible franchising, right? Grow at your own pace. And utilizing brokers is fantastic because at the end of the day, you have the end say so of, yes, I want to bring this franchisee on, and no, I don't, right? We just don't feel like it's a right fit, which is totally fine. But that's how it's really good because, again, it's additional lead flow to help you at the onset with organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I am a future franchisee and I go to an FBA consultant, what's that process look like for me?
So initially, right, we're going to have a conversation about why do you want to buy a franchise, right? Because franchising and being an entrepreneur and a business owner isn't necessarily for everybody, right? So we like to understand the why. What's the transitioning, right? Are you an existing an exiting executive? Are you already an existing business owner looking to buy in a bigger name, bigger brand, bigger profits? Or are you an investor, right? Or are you the doctor who saved up his money and wants to buy into a franchise, right?
Or maybe you're, we were talking earlier about the military veteran who wants to transition.
Absolutely. But, from the military into a civilian job and or civilian life and want a business, right? Who know how to follow, right? The SOPs and know how to follow a system, right? That's laid out. And that's what franchising is all about is, providing this layout of, hey, this is how we run the business. As long as you follow these A, B, and C's, you're going to be fine, right? So that's initially what we like to start off with is understanding one, why, what's the why, and how much how much you're looking to invest. What are you looking to invest into? That's number one. Number two is we use a profiling system called Zorical. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Zorical, but if you think of it as you take a Myers-Briggs test and plug it into franchising, and that's what a Zorical assessment is.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so what it's doing is it's testing your skills, your competencies, your values, and the brokers are utilizing those and matching you with franchises who look for those same skills, competencies, and values, right? And that's one big thing about FBA is integrated into our system is Zorical. So each and every single one of our candidates, step two, once we know the why, is we're getting a better picture of you, right? We want to make sure that you're fitting into a franchise that's built for you versus trying to mold you into a different kind of model into another franchise.
Love that. So once you go through that Zorical phase, what's the next steps?
So after Zorical, then we go into a franchise education, right? So we want them to we want to peel back the curtain a little bit and have them actually feel like, what is it like to be a franchisee, right? Which is extremely important because for two reasons, right? One, we want to make sure that are they able to follow a process, right? That's number one, because if they can't follow a process, typically it's probably not going to work out very, very well for them being a franchisee. They're going to step out of line. They're going to go do their own thing. And then now there's problems back at home, right? With the franchisor. So that's one thing that we like to look for in our process. And two, where we go with them is understanding for them to have a genuine, okay, I think I can see myself doing this, right? Because if they can't see themselves doing it, right, we won't want to kind of force their hand and say, hey, listen, this is a really great opportunity, but it's there if you want to, if you see yourself doing this. If you can't see yourself doing this, there's absolutely no reason why, we should continue, this process. We'll wait until you're ready, and then we can go on to next steps.
So you're not just shoving businesses down their throat immediately. You're doing a full analysis to kind of get a picture of who they are.
Yeah, so our process is about 8 steps, and they're not introduced to brands until about step 7.
Wow.
So the entire front end of the introduction and relationship that they're building with their broker is specifically to understand who they are and what they're interested in and what best fits them. Right. And what do they qualify for, also as well, which is big, right? We don't want you, we want you to understand that we want you to invest and, you can enter, with a $100,000 franchise and then build that up make it very, very successful, be able to sell it for a couple $100,000, and now you're able to buy into a more, a higher capital,
Right.
franchise,
Yeah.
and rinse and repeat, and just continue to build that legacy. We like to one of our things that we look for is we look to help families build legacies, right? Because they're going into a community where this business is going to live, and it's going to make, it's going to change people's lives. So we want to make sure that they're entering into a proper franchise that's best for them, but also where they're able to make a difference in their community.
Yeah.
So you'll help. Sorry, Bill.
Oh,
So,
that's
so
fine. Go ahead.
you'll help a business owner buy into a business and then exit, and then enter another business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a process that a lot of people don't or haven't really had help with, right? Is when you're ready to, okay, I'm ready to take a step back and I want to move on to the next thing. Well, where do I start, right? And not understanding where your business is at, having a business valuation, right? Working with professionals who do this, right? And who are very successful at helping those exit, and then saying, hey, are you looking to, ride off into the sunset and drink margaritas in Cabo, or are you ready for the next challenge, right? Are you ready to buy into the next business?
Yeah. As an obvious concern for anyone buying a franchise, though, is going to be how to finance it. Is that you guys have something in your process to help a franchise candidate walk through that?
Yeah. So early on, and that's typically initially probably on that first one or two conversations that they're having, not only with our coordinators, but also with our brokers. So we'll just take one step back. And so the initial call that each candidate has is with a coordinator. They're going to have two of those, right? And so the coordinator is just trying to understand, right, where they're at kind of in the process in terms of, okay, are you at a job? Are you leaving a job? Or are you looking to just immediately buy in, right? What's the timeline? And then following that, once they're introduced to the broker, that's when this 8-step process starts. So early on, right, we basically set that kind of timeline early on and understand what's the funding, what's your assets? Are you using a HELOC? Do you have a 401k? Do you just have liquid cash that's sitting in a bank that you want to use to invest?
Did you know that there are over 140 million homes in the U.S.? 97% of them have walls and ceilings that are built using drywall. The drywall repair industry is simply enormous, valued at over $13 billion a year. We're hole-in-the-wall drywall repair, and for years we have been perfecting the art of repairing drywall, developing and refining our systems, and strengthening our brand. Our business model is simple, scalable, and easy to learn. We believe it's a real game changer. We are successful drywall repair pros who decided to take our repair business to a higher level, growing both our franchise training and support to industry-leading standards. You'll benefit from our vast experience helping your franchise hit the ground running and achieve success quickly. We'll give you access to our marketing team that has created strategic programs designed to get your phone ringing and booking new business fast. Join a fast-growing leader in an exciting dynamic segment of the home service industry by franchising with Hole-in-the-Wall Drywall Repair. Start building your own business and securing your own financial future today. And so one of the myths that I try to debunk is that you don't have to be a millionaire to buy a franchise.
Absolutely not. You don't.
And it's one of those things. So, do you see yourself with people with just $100,000 or so, $150,000? Because SBA is like a $150,000 loan. So you need what, 50 grand or so available liquid cash to even qualify for the FBA loan. But if Uncle Frankie's got a little extra cash in his pocket and wants to invest in his nephew, that's also very doable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a ton of options for, a lot of people think buying a business is expensive, right? It's really not, right? Especially when you've got good credit or decent credit, right? You've got 680 and above. Most places are going to be able to work with you, right? And if you make a pretty decent salary, or you've got a business on the side, typically a lot of these funding firms are looking for people to have, $75,000 to $80,000 a year in income, right? So whether it's full-time income, you run a side gig, you've got a side business that's doing really, really well, right? You've got to be able to show these banks, hey, I'm making money, right? And I've got good credit. You can trust me, and they're going to help you achieve your dream, right, of entrepreneurship. So, there's franchise options as low as like $40,000, $20,000. And there's, ones that are upwards of a couple million. Yeah. But, I like to say there's a franchise for everybody, right? And it just depends on where in life and where you want to start.
Yeah. And even if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, you may still want to use someone else's money to start that business.
Absolutely. You don't need to liquefy, yourself completely, right? Mm-hmm. You want to have working capital. You want to put yourself in a position to be able to support, your employees and your business. And what if you do go through a dry spell while you're ramping up, right? You want to have some reserves that are going to have you protected and you're not kind of freaking out and panicking.
Right. So at what point are they actually getting introduced to multiple brands?
So following our franchise education, right? That's step number 4. We go into step 5, right? Step 5 is a market analysis. And so we want to analyze where are they at, what businesses are flourishing, right? And where are they located? Let's check for availability, right? So these are where territory checks come into play, right? And so the broker is going to submit territory checks to, a couple of franchises that they believe are potential fits, right? They haven't made any presentations, but they're then going to start submitting some territory checks, see what's available, right? And then from there, once those territory checks come back available, right? Then that's step number 6. Now we're into step 7, which is the presentation stage. This is where we're now embedding, right, kind of the franchisor with the potential Z and saying, hey, listen, here's a franchise, here's a drywall franchise that's located in your area. They're available and they're within your budget. And I think you'd be a great fit for this, right? And that's when we're then making that pair.
Yeah.
So it is towards the end. So once we've figured out funding, once we've helped them understand what it's like to be a franchisee, once they've understand themselves really on a deeper level with the Zorical assessment and their market is available, would we then make that introduction?
And then that would say go to our franchise development company. So Fran Growth would then get that lead at that point. So even before we get them, you guys have done all this pre-qualification.
Exactly.
So which is great for Zor to, now I know you're not just giving me some tire kicker, you're giving me someone who's been pre-qualified.
It's been vetted, exactly.
I mean, we were with some other places and we were just get, dozens of people that, I want
a franchise.
to learn more. And it's like,
Yeah, they had a bad day at work, and they come home for 15 minutes. They want to go into business and fire the boss. And,
you see the 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night.
but it's truly a
clicks.
fantasy. It's just like, tomorrow morning I got to get back to work because I'm just getting by.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing that there's so many different tiers to franchising because I almost felt like we were kind of in the minor leagues for a long time, and now we're working with Fran Growth. I feel that we're now stepping up into the much bigger league.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's more even above us, but once we get into the hundreds of units, now we're stepping into a different realm. But I mean, we saw so many people who were just, bootstrapping it, going to shows without a consultant, without anyone helping them, and they were succeeding. So there are definitely different avenues for this, and not every development company wants to take another person on. Like I know that Fran Growth doesn't take on more than a few a year.
Right.
So, but there are other companies that are out that are like that. What are some of the companies that you work with? So you've got, I know Fran Growth, and we're an FSO, but the other organizations similar to that.
Yeah. So let's start with kind of breaking down it because there is a true difference between a development group and an FSO, right?
Okay.
So with the development group, right, they own those brands, right? So if you look at like a Horsepower or if you look at a Neighborly, right, those are development groups who own their brands and, they're the ones that are growing it.
Yeah, like Resi Brands and Power Brands.
Right, Empower Brands, things like that. They're the sole proprietors, right, of each of whether it's painting or it's,
And they own multiple brands?
multiple franchises.
That's franchises?
Right. So like if you look at like Empower, they've got like Architect, Outdoor Lighting Perspectives, right? They've got different franchises. The same thing with FSO groups, right? So if you look at like a Franchise Fastlane, you look at a Fran Growth, they've got brands in all different segments of the industry. So you can have health and wellness, you can have, senior care, you can have also home services as well. So a lot of people just kind of pick and choose, but the FSOs, they're working alongside the actual franchise to help grow them, right? And so they're more of like a coach than an actual owner of the actual franchise.
So the difference would be you've got the owners, the franchise, what would you call them? The franchise like Neighborly
FSOs. So there's a development
Yeah,
group.
Fran Dev.
group,
Yeah.
Fran Dev, and then FSO's franchise sales organization, right? So the difference is really the ownership in those businesses.
Yeah, Fran Dev is developing their own, developing their own franchises that they own. FSO is more like a hired gun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I follow several, like Horsepower Brands has always caught my eye.
Tony's amazing.
Tony's great.
He's a fun guy.
We've got the local Mighty Dog Roofing franchisee, Tom. He's going to be on the podcast soon. we're buddies of, Bumblebee Blinds, Gatsby Glass. Those are all part of it. It's a neat organization. And then to see how they have all of these brands, but they are all supported by horsepower in all of their processes from, I don't think they do market. They used to do market, but not anymore. And then accounting, and then you've got your lead gen and all these different things they're all associated to horsepower, but on a higher level.
Oh yeah.
And then they support all these different brands. And they're actually developing an app where all of their brands are in an app together. And so then as a consumer, homeowner, whoever,
You can go in and
they can
select
go
what
in and
services you
say,
need.
hey, listen, I want a pool cleaning service, whatever. And then they can go in and they now are fishing in only the horsepower community.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Tony and I were talking about that because they don't have a drywall guy. And so maybe we can partner with them that we can be part of that community, even though we're not underneath horsepower. So it's kind of a neat behind the curtain,
Sneak peek.
sneak
right?
peek. It's like there's so much out there. And that we're just really tapping, just the tip of the
Tapping in.
iceberg.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I find it fascinating because what I really find fascinating is that even people who haven't had a lot of experience in business or franchising can get into the franchise realm, whether they're an owner or whether they're working for a company like you guys. We met so many people at the IFPG convention that they were almost like the realtors of business.
Of business,
you know?
exactly.
Mhm.
It's essentially what it is, right? But and this is one thing that's a lot of misconstruction comes around. This is brokers don't sell franchises, right? They don't have the right to award a franchise to their franchisee. If that was the case, I mean, who wouldn't want to be a broker?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that they're ultimately right, just making sure that they're qualifying and make sure that this franchise is the right fit for their candidate, right? It's something that they're looking for.
So it's necessary for them to understand their candidate well, like you detailed, but they also need to understand
The
the
franchises.
franchise that they want to sell.
Not only what goes on with each franchise, but more importantly, who the franchises are looking for, right? Because you have kind of your targeted, if you will, right? Your targeted profile, right? Your kind of your avatar of who does very, very well, right? And that's where our Zorical assessment helps us match to that avatar very, very well through that assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, very cool. So being able to to kind of get my thought is, I saw people that were doing it part time. They were selling. They were consultants or brokers,
Mhm.
but they have another job, or maybe they're semi-retired,
Right.
and this is kind of a side business for them. Because I was looking at even our children, Bill's got a beautiful daughter that if she wanted to get into franchising, I think she really could have an avenue into becoming a broker or consultant someday.
Absolutely. And there's you'll actually see a lot of like Fran Dev, representatives actually are turned into brokers, right?
Mhm.
Because they know so much about one brand,
Mhm.
or they've worked with multiple brands. So now they've got, 4 or 5 in the Rolodex, if you will,
Yeah.
right? And that they can come in and say, hey, I'm working with candidates. I already know, how to present them and how to show them and what the franchises are looking for. And I can do this, on my own, and now work independently, but with a ton of different brands.
Yeah, we were eating lunch with a gentleman at the show, and getting to know who he was. Where did you come from? Oh, yeah, I was working in the oil fields. I used to run in the oil fields, and then a friend of mine said you should look at franchise, and then he got on board with Neighborly, and then he started off as just qualifier, and just from the very beginning,
Oh yeah.
and now he's the president of like three
Running
brands
3 brands.
at Neighborly,
Yeah.
all within a matter of like a dozen, 10 years. And he's been able to go from changing careers. I mean, he's a grown adult, but changed careers. He didn't want to be in the oil field anymore. He wanted to change something different, moved to Waco, Texas. And now he's got a whole different life ahead of him just because he switched into franchising. To me, it's mind blowing because I never thought that was an
Possible.
avenue to
Right,
go.
Right.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who fail at it. But if you can succeed at it, because the commission on a franchise could be, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So
Right.
you sell a couple of those a year, it's not a bad life.
And the other thing too that I like to point out too is, at least from a broker's standpoint, is the commission is whatever it is, right? Ultimately, you want to make sure that you're putting your prospect in the right franchise, right? And we see that at FBA, right? Is on average about 16 months after their initial purchase of a franchise, they're growing, which means they're getting put in the right systems. And that's what's more important, right? Is ultimately you want, and same thing as a franchisor, you're going to want to have those kinds of prospects that come in, and sure, they might have bought one territory, maybe they bought 2 territories, but 16 months later, they're saying, hey, I'm ready for another 2. Right. And now you see that growth. Right.
Yeah.
And I always like to say, I want to deal with 50 franchisees. I don't want to deal with 250 franchisees.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's less of a headache.
Yeah.
So multi-unit development is crucial to the growth of, I think, any franchise, but also, doing it responsibly is also the other way to do it.
Yeah, that's great.
It's huge.
So what are some hiccups and what are some struggles you see mistakes that people have made early on when they're trying to either develop a franchise or trying to buy a franchise?
I think jumping the gun and kind of just not being open-minded, right? Saying, hey, I want to stick to my guns. This is what I know. And I only want to look at franchises in this space, right? And to open up their world to what's possible, right? Because a lot of people don't understand, right? I mean, you can have no idea what drywall is, right? But then you can be trained on it and be successful, right? And it's not like you're going to be an HVAC certified person, or you got to be a chef to run a restaurant type of thing and actually understand kind of like, how culinary works and how that whole world is. So franchising is what I love about it is that it's you're in a very coachable system, right? And that's the people that you really want to look for. You're coachable people.
That's true. And an ideal candidate is somebody, when we were building our ideal candidate outline, someone who's willing to learn, you don't have to have all the ideas, just come with an openness.
Absolutely. And one thing that, like in college, right, playing college baseball, my coach always said, and it was stamped in our locker room, is put yourself in a position to succeed, right? Always put others in a position to succeed. And so that's how you really generate, right? Especially from an individual perspective, you want to put yourself in a position to succeed, and you want to put those around you, because that's typically where you scale, is when you have others around you who are growing with you. That's where you're seeing kind of exponential growth.
Yeah. Do you see any trends, anything that have kind of popped in and out of the franchise sector? I know I was talking with someone a while back, and he's like, "Oh yeah, well, yogurt was the trend."
Oh yeah.
And then now it's kind of dead.
It's died down. I mean, boba's another thing that we've seen, right? Boba, I'm located over in Baldwin Park, and we used to have probably 10 boba spots within
Is that
3
right?
miles. Yeah, within 3 miles. I mean, it was like every plaza had at least 2.
I know my kids were really into it there for a while.
And it's died down. Now I think there's only 3 open. Right. So it was something that was like on the trend. It was hot and popular for the last 3-4 years, maybe 5, and then died down. It's one of those things that's kind of losing its fat, right? It's a fad. And so one thing that I always like to talk about is how to keep yourself how to become a recession-proof business, right? I mean, COVID taught us a lot, right? I mean, a lot of businesses were affected by this, but then there were some others who actually flourished right through COVID.
Yeah, it's true. We were actually considered essential. I'm not sure we've ever been essential before, James, but we were then.
Hey, by the way, fun fact, I've never had a boba.
I've never had one either.
I have. It is not my cup of tea. It's a little bit different. It's like tapioca. Yeah, literally.
Yeah,
it's
right.
tea with tapioca balls or something like that.
Yeah, no, I've just never had it.
Those who like it really do.
Yeah.
One other thing I see a lot, and we saw a lot this past year going to the franchise shows, was a lot of coffee businesses. And I just wonder if you have an opinion on those.
I mean, it is a very, I mean, you've got the big players. You've got Starbucks. You've got Dunkin'.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Scooters. You've got some of these bigger franchise brands and just brands in general who are tapped out in markets. They can't, they're going to turn into kind of like the McDonald's model where they're like pancaking on top of each other just because they want to keep on bringing people in.
Sure.
And so that's why you're starting to see, especially in the food, when you see like food and beverage industry, it's a very saturated industry, right? You'll see, 20 different pizza spots and 20 different burger spots. Why? Because there's nothing real different, right? They're all going to make a different recipe, or they're going to have some sort of different add-on.
It's kind of like the microbrew philosophy. Like you got the king of beers, but then you also, everyone veers over to those smaller microbrewery type things just because they're niche. They get tired of the same thing.
Same thing. And that's actually one thing that I've seen popping up, especially here in Orlando. I mean, before, if you go back, 4 or 5 years, never, I would never see a brewery. Now I drive down the street. Yeah. There's one downtown. There's one in the Milk District.
There's 5 within a handful of miles from here.
Right. So like they're starting to pop up a lot more because people are wanting to experience different, different beers, different tastes. Yeah. There's a lot of things to do. So, there's a good side to the food industry, and there's also a negative, right? Which is, it's easy to replicate, and then,
just food for thought, because there's a huge, we had Bang cookies are coming up big. There's crumble cookies coming up. There's all kind, it's like all these dessert spots, right? And in a world that's so health, everything is health focused and it's nutrition based. It's get your ways to wells and get your hormones right. It's like, how are all these large? Because to buy a crumble cookie, it's expensive. You can't just go buy one. They got to like really select you and vet you and make sure you have a lot of money in the bank.
Absolutely.
And those are all brick and mortar stores, which also cost a lot of money to get lit up. I'm just surprised that all of those styles are really curious to see how fast, if they blow up or if they phase out.
So actually, it's funny you mentioned Bang cookies because we're actually onboarding Bang as we speak. We're bringing them on board to FBA, and what's really crucial about them too is people love their sweets. I go to the gym every day. I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning, right, and I still, at the end of the night, right, you wouldn't mind having a little bit of cheesecake or having a cookie or something like that, right? So I think that's typically there, and then also who you're catering to, right? A lot of kids love sugar.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and that's kind of like that sweet spot. It's like when you're a cookie franchise, Insomnia, Crumble, Bang, right? It fits every demographic. It fits grandma who's got a sweet tooth. It fits the kids who's got a sweet tooth. And also for those who are kind of healthy, young, and fit. Still want to munch on something, every now and then. Yeah,
interesting. I'm going to be interested to follow that because they're really not cookies. In my mind, they're like little mini cakes because they're just so
sweet. They're
so
packed with calories.
Are they?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. Like one of those like sugar cookies has 1,500 calories.
Ooh.
You can get that from a full meal, right? I'd rather have a steak and some veggies.
Yeah.
They were giving away Bang cookies at the IPG. It was like, oh, dangerous. Well, Frankie, is there anything else we've not touched on? I think you'll be back. I think that I would love to have you kind of come back and just talk some more about this as we sell units and as FBA helps us, onboard on and grow. I'd love to have you back. Maybe get some of your brokers to kind of come on when they're in town. I'd love to be able to go to your facility and just kind of talk about us to your people as well.
Listen, we've got an open door policy. We'd love to have you. And we've actually got a similar setup. We've got a media room as well. So we can film. We've got our videographer we'll shoot a podcast.
Nice.
Have you, talk with Sabrina, our CEO, and we'd definitely love to be back.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good. So
to that.
If somebody wants to get a hold of you or get a hold of FBA, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Francisco Rosario, and you can also email me at f.rosario@franchisebeeasinboyasandapple.com.
Love it. Appreciate
All
you.
right. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for coming on board. Everyone, thanks for listening. Another really good show. We'd like to thank you for listening to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. We'd love for you to join our Facebook group and keep the conversation going. If you'd like to learn more about us and our business, check us out at holeinthewall.com. If you'd like to learn more about how to start a Hole in the Wall franchise, go to holeinthewallfranchising.com.